And before I start this live stream, because this is really the first live stream back since I stopped doing it, since I stopped doing it 3 months ago. I'm just going to talk a little bit about why I stopped, and I do this predominantly for the female audience. So before I start, I just want to say to the male audience that 99.9% of the male audience are really lovely, welcoming, respectful, and beautiful people. And most of the men that have interacted with me on YouTube have been really, kind, open people. But there has been a small percentage of men which have acted inappropriately. And over the last years, it's created a lot of reflection. When you are a public speaker and when you speak to people regularly, and when you regularly have a hard time from a specific gender that you're speaking to, it creates reflection. And firstly, I want to say the blame, even though ultimately there is no blame, I think when somebody is being abusive, it's appropriate to allocate blame. The men that have been abusive to me online, which I'm sure most of you have seen, either being condescending, being rude and asking questions, writing rude messages, whatever you've seen, the blame is with them. It's with them not going into themselves, with them having unresolved issues in themselves, and it's there. It's not in any way a woman's fault or responsibility. However, because I'm in the subject of reflection, I reflect on myself and what I could do differently. And one thing that I've noticed over the years is, and from watching other young female speakers, is that a lot of the time we don't have the skills and the tools in order to deal appropriately with a man when they're being abusive. I didn't have great role models when I was growing up. My mum was 40 years older than me, or 38 years older than me. And so, she grew up in a time where when she went to work, it was normal that men slapped, pinched, abused, discriminated against her. And, when she first got a mortgage, she wasn't allowed to take a mortgage as a woman. She had to have her dad sign for it because women weren't deemed responsible or able to do something like that, even though she was a computer programmer in the 60s. And it's not my mum's fault or the woman's fault in any way that they didn't know how to deal with men being abusive and rude. It's something that we're dealing with continuously in our society, and we're navigating new ways. And the reason that this message is for women is because I hope I haven't contributed to displaying to you a way a woman shouldn't handle men being abusive online. I know that in the past, when men have been abusive to me, I've gone into passivity. I've blissed out into oneness and just kind of ignored their behavior and just kind of gone into bliss myself and just sort of seen it as their karma and their issue. Also, sometimes it's not been that. Sometimes I've been triggered into a pleasing fight-flight response. So man's been abusive to me and I've kind of gone into being pleasing, or I've gone into freezing a bit. Not like really dramatically. And I've not even always registered that I'm doing that. And then also because I don't know how to handle it when someone is being like passive-aggressively rude to you. Because if you try to say something, or passive-aggressively sexually abusive to you, like if you try and say something, then they put it back on you and it's like a slippery dome. And because I've not had great role models for that, I don't know how to deal with it. So what's happened, I think sometimes, is it looks like I'm like non-reactive in a positive spiritual way. And I don't think it's a good non-reaction. Sometimes I think I've dealt with it amazingly. And sometimes I think I've been proactive, but sometimes I think I haven't. And I'm not blaming myself. The blame is on the men that have been inappropriate. I just reflect, and I've seen that, and I've reflected on that on myself. And I've been working to try and get myself out of being passive and to being more proactive. And that's part of setting up this Telegram group. So anyone to be in the Telegram group to ask me questions has to have identified themselves through a payment avenue. So we can have their name, we can have their address, we can have their identity. So if they're going to be abusive, then boom, straight away it can go to the police. And I'm not holding back anymore. Any man that is abusive online, it will be noted and given to the police. No way is it acceptable. I do it for myself and I do it for all other women online. This has to be changed, the way women are treated. And I don't think that people that are listening to this talk realize how bad it is for women online. For women online, they're regularly used to being online stalked, to being sent hate messages, to being sexually harassed, to being made feel uncomfortable. And that's not just me, that's most women online. I think it's worse if you're younger. I think it's worse if you're more attractive, but not necessarily. I think it's worse if you're opinionated, but not necessarily. There's exceptions. I think most women and men, I think, do get abused online, but we're talking about women here, and I suspect that women get it worse. And it's also a non-talked about thing. So any woman that you're enjoying online that has some form of success, I assure you she undergoes in the background online abuse. It's not like, oh, that person's got worse karma and they are getting it because they've got bad karma or something. It is just the way it is currently in our society. A powerful, strong, opinionated woman who has the confidence to put themselves in line there's gonna be male energy that is gonna try and blow them down. Now, 99% of the men that follow me are really beautiful hearts and souls and open to expansion and growing. But unfortunately, the ones that are abusive, like stand out because, you're having your life threatened or you're being sexually harassed. And also, people that aren't being abusive don't understand certain prerogatives of a woman being online. I hope I'm saying that right. Like if you leave a message saying you're hot or you're cute or I'm attracted to you, to a man, I think they often think that that's a compliment to the woman. And I understand that. It's like, I understand that that is what they're thinking. But what they don't understand is that the woman is going through abuse, sexual, verbal, like abuse online. She's being harassed. So when you write that, the woman that reads it doesn't know the intention of the person that's read that. They can't see inside the heart. So to them, it's most likely an intimidating proclamation. Next, it's not appropriate. In the past, I thought, oh, that's okay. No, it's not appropriate. There's reasons why we have laws in workplace for men and women to not do this to each other. And this is my workplace in the end. Like, I don't want to put non-duality in this idea of workplace, but it is. It's like, I'm not doing this for money, but in the end, overall, I earn money from it. But even if I didn't, it's still a workplace. I am like expressing something, and hopefully it is aiding, or hopefully it is giving something to the people listening. And it's not appropriate to be talking about fancying or loving people. It's okay to fancy your teacher. I fancied many teachers, but it's maybe not okay to express about their looks because, there's a reason we don't do it in workplace because of lots of different complications. But when you do it online, it's like that woman doesn't know where it's coming from and she's already being sexually harassed to the hilt. So it's like, why, get involved in that? You don't know what's going on. Has she that day had a message by a man saying how he's going to rape her? And that is the way of it. This isn't just me that it happens to, it's all women online. So I know that the tendency in spirituality is to be like, no, you've got karma, you've got issues that aren't dealt with, otherwise it wouldn't happen. yeah, then why is it happening to all women? Is it all women have karma that's undealt with? I think as gender, as a whole of society, we have karma that's undealt with, but I'm not even going into victim blaming or to blaming women for this situation. Yeah, and there's so many ways in which I'm sure I could have said this better. This is meant to be for women, to empower them, to say, there's been many times where you might have seen me being passive to a male being inappropriate to me, and you might have thought that was love or compassionate, or that was being non-reactive in a positive spiritual way, and most probably it wasn't. It's inappropriate that men do that, and it's appropriate for us to feel confident and safe enough to stand up and say, this is inappropriate. I'm never going back online in the way that I used to and allowing men to treat me like that. I regularly took it on Sundays streams because I thought that I had to in some way, I had to endure this abuse, but I'm never doing that type of thing again. Yeah, that's not anybody's fault, it's not my fault. Yeah, that's the rant over. I do it for the women and just encourage all women to research this subject, because for myself, I know that I can tend to go into passivity when I'm faced with a male being inappropriate, male energy being inappropriate, and that's, you know, there's some, that's not the healthy way. It's most probably an unhealthy way that I've been taught, and yeah, and I don't want you to project onto me that I'm acting in the correct way, or I have been acting in the correct way. Yeah. I went onto these women's channels, you know, watching and thinking about this. These young women channels, there's a lot of young non-duality speakers, and it made me want to vomit some of the way that the men were treating the teacher, the women teachers, and it was so covert, it wasn't obvious. Like a big form of it was the male being covertly condescending to the woman, you know, like implying that she didn't know and they did know, and it's just like repulsive. And I just know when I was watching it that has happened to me so many times I can't count, and I've taken it, and I watched these women take it again and again and again, and yeah. Peace. So many men do, if you're feeling guilty in some way, this isn't about guilting men, because there's so many of you that got beautiful hearts, and if you're feeling guilt, I can bet the bottom dollar is most probably not you that do these types of things. The ones that do these types of things won't even be listening to this message. As soon as I go onto it, they'll be like, or they'll be sitting there thinking about how they can abuse me, or excited by the fact that I show any emotion or even speak about the subject. Like, yes, let's get her even more. So, like, don't let this be like a, yeah. So, yeah, they won't even be listening to it. And, you know, if you have written stuff like, you're lovely, you're beautiful, like, I also understand that, you know, we don't have these dialogues, and most probably you meant it with a good heart, and it's just not comprehending the impact in which that has on a woman, because you don't understand that women online are being abused to the hilt. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you all for listening. And this really is for the female listeners, although maybe it's been enlightening for the men, just in comradeship. Yeah, I can't say the proper word I want to say there. Yeah. Okay, so we can go on to the live stream.